Okay, so as always, we see a lot of questions about the 10th house, a lot of 10th house questions. I mean, the winner always is the love questions, the seventh house related questions, the Venus questions. But the pulling up the rear or pulling up on a very close second are the what career should I choose? Is this the right career for me? Will I be successful at such and such? And so, personally, I have never used this particular technique that we're going to look at. I have a technique that I love, and that has always given me the very good results, especially as far as finding charts that indicate fame or that are that show charts that will be famous. And at some point, if somebody's interested in doing like that would be a paid seminar, doing a paid seminar about how to find fame in the chart, then I'd be totally open to doing that. But maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe there's a medieval way to do it. And so I thought that when I saw this. I was looking when I was looking at mother, right? We were looking at father, we were looking at mother, we were looking at other things, the high leg, right? But when I was in that chapter three is mother, if I'm not mistaken, but I saw chapter two here, and I was like, on the force of the native and his prosperity, and on his duties and on his kingdom. And I thought, okay, well, so that's all about success and how high in life a person is going to go. And that could be a very interesting thing to look at. So, one of the things that I'd like to advise for people who are doing this kind of work or interested in this kind of astrology is to be a little tactile about working with this stuff and make workbooks for yourself because it's so dense, it's so hard to get through. But if you make it into kind of a comprehensive, because it's all just lists. It's all just lists of conditions. And so if you just kind of create a list that makes sense for you for figuring things out and for putting, parsing things together, then I think it would be easier than kind of reading and rereading and rereading that same paragraph because because the language is just so dense, But if we get to, whenever we see an and, you do another dot or you do another number or whatever the fuck, I think that's going to be a lot easier. So let's explore it. Like I said, this is not a technique I've worked with before, and I wasn't really sure if I thought that it worked so well. I mean, when we looked at the other profession stuff, that there was some promising stuff around it. If you wish to explore concerning the native's force and prosperity, and his duties and his kingdom, look at the sun in diurnal nativities, indeed the moon and Saturn in nocturnal nativities, the tenth and its lord, the part of kingdom which we will talk about, and the planet in whose domicile you were to find it. Right? So the part of kingdom and its lord. I don't know. That was a really loquacious way to say that. And then it gets a little bit more specific. It says if you were to see the set significators, namely the sun and the moon, or either of them in angles, namely made fortunate and strong, joined to benefics. Okay, so the sun and the moon have to be in angles, strong. So that means obviously by sign generally, right? Joined to benefics, because already if they're in angle, they're strong. Joined to benefics, or even to others well disposed, okay? And with reception, right? So we've talked a lot about reception. There are videos about that, and that's something I'm using more and more and more all the time. And the Oriental ones were aspecting the sun, and the Occidental ones were aspecting the moon and Saturn. Now, that's an important, interesting thing because the Oriental ones, basically, this is about sect, because if the Oriental ones are aspecting the sun, that means the diurnal planets are aspecting the sun. The diurnal planets are Jupiter and Saturn. The Occidental ones are Mars and Venus. Right, so even if a benefic isn't, and maybe Saturn were aspecting the sun, or Jupiter were aspecting the sun, or you want Venus aspecting the moon and Jupiter aspecting the sun, if possible, right? But really, what you kind of that this is the first one, and look at what he says. This will signify the native is undoubtedly going to be a king. I mean, that's pretty interesting, and that's just with that. That's just with that. See those significators, right? So let's just right now I have five charts, and we're just going to do that. We're just going to do that first. We're just going to see if either of these planets have either of these not planets but charts have the sun and moon or moon in angles, and then what's going on with them. So we're starting with King Charles, right? So I wanted the king's chart to see if, because he said there'll be a king, right? If these things are going on. And look at that. The moon is in Taurus, exalted with Rahu, which I think is really interesting. Um, and it's applying to the Saturn, right? So that's one of the eastern planets. But remember that the moon and Saturn are the significators for kind of professional success at night. And so here they are trining each other. The moon especially is very strong. And also, Saturn is the ruler of the part of fortune. So we've got the moon and Saturn. Basically, this what we call that when a planet is exalted or in its own sign, and it's applying to another. We call that pushing power. So the moon is pushing its power onto onto this planet, and of course, the moon as is exaltation ruler of the 11th house. Matter of fact, it's nighttime, so she might actually be the actual ruler, the all mutant. And so Venus has five, Moon has four. The moon has another three because it's nighttime. I'm talking points now. If you've been with me through these, you know we've been going back and forth through these dignity charts. I'm not going to pull the dignity chart up now, but I'm just kind of listing it off. 5 points for Venus for domicile, 4 points for Moon for exaltation, 3 points for Moon for triplicity. The Moon is the winner so far. Then what is it? It's the ninth or tenth. Two points for Mercury for the term, and and another point for Mercury. So 3 points for Mercury. So the winner is the moon. So the moon is the ruler of the 11th house here. The moon is the ruler of the 12th, obviously too, right? Because she's intercepted here. But interestingly enough, the moon is the ruler of the becomes the mutant of the 11th. And this is something that obviously we're going to be looking at. And this trine. Anything else? Doesn't look like it. No, but we'll get to the other significators. We're going to go one at a time. It sun. So now we could say we're not going to say that the sun is in the 10th because the sun is within 3 degrees of the 11th. So we'll put the sun in the 11th here. Otherwise, the moon is where she's in the fourth. Yep. So moon, both of them are kind of the sun is in the 11th, the moon is angular. Okay. So that's interesting. Oh, so what's going on with them? They're opposing each other. Well, but look, the moon is within 4 degrees of the fifth. So they're both really kind of straddling the cusps of they're at the end of the tenth and the fourth, straddling the cusps of the fifth. But maybe strong enough that can be showing up in that way. Anything else going on with them? Yes, the sun is applying to Mars, right? That's one of the Western planets. It's one of the nocturnal planets, and that's a malefic. And so we can see, and remember that Sun and Mars are both the rulers of Aries, and so that's a very fiery combination, a very choleric. Remember, cholera is the temperament connected to fire. It's a very choleric, and Mars is in Leo, and so there's reception. So now remember, so there was one of those things about reception. So if we wanted to be technically and say technically it hasn't passed over the cusp yet, but we know that what 5 degrees before the cusp to 15 degrees after the cusp is supposedly the most active part of the house. So that really does put these in the 11th and 5th. But if we wanted to see them as in the 10th and if we did a whole sign, it would automatically be 11th and 5th. All right. But we can certainly we can see how. But now look at that Sun Mars. Obviously, that means Moon Mars. Moon's applying into it soon at some point too. The Sun's left the trine from Jupiter. The Moon's also left the trine from Jupiter. So, or sextile from Jupiter. So that's interesting too. This is Prince Andrew, Prince Charles's brother. They're 12 years apart, so there's some interesting similarities. In this particular case, this is another one that's kind of similar. The sun is within 5 degrees of the eighth house. The moon is within 5 degrees of the fifth house, but in a different sign. So we could say technically the moon is angular, but same thing, kind of at the end of angles. In this particular case, if I'm not mistaken, what we see is that the sun is recently separated from Jupiter, from the sextile of Jupiter, and the moon is applying to something. Oh yeah, moon is applying to Venus, right? The moon is applying to Venus. Venus is the ruler of the part of fortune, and Venus is also the ruler of the fourth, right? And she's what these exalted in whatever planets here. Interesting. And then Elvis Presley. So anything going on here? Nope. Nope. But moon is in its joy, but moon is not angular. Sun is not angular. Okay. Walt Disney, the moon is angular. Mm. The sun is 10 degrees away from the cusp of the fourth, but the moon is angular. Right, so the moon applying to anybody? Oh yeah, the moon's very busy. She's applying to the sun, and she's just left the square of Mars. She's applying to the square of Saturn and Jupiter, right? And so, what was it? The she just looked. That's in one of those Western planets, or one of those nocturnal planets that she just left, right? It's a square and it's her detriment, but it's a very, very, very productive. That'd be very active and very productive, very about productivity, very active and very about productivity. Anyway, on going on, and then is that the only thing going on with that moon? Yeah, basically it's the sun and then all of this stuff that she'll go towards. And then because Ella really fits it almost the best, but almost, right? Because the sun is very much in the ninth. It's, more than 7 degrees away. So pretty much the sun is in the ninth, but of course that's the ninth. The joy is is the ninth of the sun. Then did I say that? The joy is the ninth of the sun. The ninth is the joy of the sun. The Venus, it's with a very strong planet. The Venus is Casimir. The moon is in the 11th. So it might be also that the 11th, going back to chapter one, there was talk about finding planets in the 10th and the 11th, or first or seventh, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not mistaken, 11 did have quite a bit to do with it. And so here we're seeing that even hovering around the 10th, the 10th, end of the ninth, beginning of the 11th, it seems to be almost as, and if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what the Gokalan were talking about. The Gokalan were that couple that were trying to disprove astrology, and then they became astrologers, and they had I forget what was the term that they used, but they were like power zones or something, and one of the power zones was around the midheaven. It didn't necessarily have to be in the midheaven to be working. So this is something that we are getting kind of a look at. So just looking at that first condition, we've seen enough charts. We're looking at what, five, six charts here that give us enough of a background to see if we think that makes any sense. Of course, that's just the very first thing. So then we go back to the next condition. And the next condition is, well, okay, if the luminaries aren't there, then you want to look at the other significators, the Lord of the 10th, the planet, the Lord of the part of kingdom. And then you want to also look at the ascendant and the ruler of the 10th, and then basically what's going on between them. What's kind of who's zooming who, what kind of aspect is happening between them. So we're looking for we're looking for the same kind of condition. Are they in an angle? Are they possibly joined with benefic or receiving any kind of aspect from the benefics? Do they have reception? I won't necessarily this Oriental one, and then he goes on to say a little bit more. And if the benefics were to aspect the luminaries, as was said, right? So he's kind of bringing them. It looks like he's bringing it back, or he's saying, okay, look for those other ones, and look for those other ones if you don't see the moon and the sun in those in the angles, and try to figure out what's going on with those, right? And then also, if you've got benefics that are aspecting the luminaries and they're in angles, the benefics are in angles, or they were to aspect one of the other significators that's in the 10th, or and more so if they're above the horizon, right? If they're above the horizon, they're going to be more powerful. And then even more so if they're in the 10th with them, and then more strongly if there's reception. So let's say if it were the nighttime and the moon and Jupiter were up in the 10th together in Cancer, right? That would be the absolute pinnacle of what they're kind of talking about. Or even where if it were the moon in let's say it's Pisces rising, and the moon is, it's one of those weird things where the moon just happens to be in Pisces, and the Jupiter just happens to be in Cancer, and Cancer is the midheaven, right, or something like that, or some weird shit like that. I don't know. I'm fucking I'm speedballing, but what am I speedballing or freeballing or freebasing or whatever the fuck speedballing, freebasing. But you kind of get it, and you see how kind of disjoint some of this stuff can be. I mean, this can be kind of hard to get into. So let's look at that second one. We're looking for the Lord of the Tenth, the Lord of the key part of kingdom. Now we'll come to part of kingdom, and we're looking for maybe what's going on between that and the ruler of the ascendant, right? So let's just do that. So far, only two charts really fulfill something close to the agenda or something close, and that's or three charts really the close to that first one, which is Prince Charles, Walt Disney, and Ella. Prince Charles, but Prince Charles and Walt Disney the most, right? They're kind of the most. Ella has kind of. We're going to get to how interesting it is for Ella, and with this next condition. So now let's find the part of kingdom. And as a matter of fact, let's come back. Let's come to here. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's more than one part of kingdom. There are four of them, if I'm not mistaken, four or five of them. Let's see. So the first part is a nobilitas. This is part of kingship or reign, right? And of course, that could be something we would look at, but it's not the same as part of kingdom, right? So this is part of kingship or reign, or pars regni. This is another part of kingship of kings and of dispositors, right? But when it comes to kingdom, nope, it's the same thing. It's this one. The fourth part of the 10th house is called the part of kingship and victory and assistance. And it's taken from Sun to Saturn. Now, hopefully, you've seen enough of these that you know what we're doing when we're looking at parts. We're taking the distance between these two significators and we are projecting it from the ascendant. We're projecting that distance, that angle, from the ascendant, right? So, and Sun to Saturn is actually one that I'm always doing with people because that's one of the best examples because Sun to Saturn are the two significators for father. So that's a great example for what a part is about. It's where you use the distance between two significators to basically give you an imaginary point that represents that thing. And so Sun and Saturn both represent father. And so when we take their distance and then Sun and Saturn, when we take their distance and then whatever project that from the ascendant, then we have, like I said, a part or lot of father. In this case, though, we have a part or lot of victory, or a lot of kingship and victory. So it's nighttime, so we're going to go from Saturn to Mars to Sun. And Saturn to Sun is going to take us 60 degrees, right? Because it's 5 Virgo to 5 Scorpio, and then plus 17 to 22 Scorpio. We're going to do the same thing from Leo. So 5 Leo to 5 what? Libra, or 6 Libra, and go plus 17 is 23 Libra. So note that here with King Charles, the ruler of kingdom, the ruler of the lot of kingdom or lot of kingship and victory and assistance, that's in its own sign. It's on its own sign. That's very strong. That's a very strong lot of kingdom, right? Wouldn't you say so? And and it's applying to, look at that. The ruler of the lot of kingdom is applying to the ruler of the tenth. Remember, they were saying, now, what do we want to be doing? We want to be looking at the ruler of the ascendant. We want to be looking at but and he said Al-Mubtaz, and there's something very interesting about that in this chart. If I were to, I want to actually show you this one. What degree is it? Okay, so the degree of the ascendant is, oh no, the degree of the midheaven is what I'm talking about here. The degree of the midheaven is 14 degrees of Aries. No, it is the degree of the ascendant. The degree of the ascendant. The degree of the ascendant. So if you remember when we talk about essential dignities, we talk about how for every degree there are potentially five planets who have descending power of rulership in the sign, right? So the strongest planet in Aries and at shall we say 4 degrees of Aries, or no, what we're looking at 5 degrees of Leo, 6 degrees of Leo. We're looking at the sixth degree of Leo. So there are only potentially four planets who can have rulership because there is no exaltation ruler, right? So the sun has the strong domicile, 5 points, but it's nighttime. So Jupiter will now get the triplicity, which gives him 3 points. Then Jupiter has between 0 and 6. We're in the sixth degree, but we haven't started at 6.00, right? Because remember, the sixth degree starts at 5 degrees and 1 minute and goes to 600. So we're at the very end of Jupiter's term, which means Jupiter now has 3 plus 2, which is 5. Then it's the first decanate, which means Saturn, which has 1 point, which means that the Sun has 5 points, but so does Jupiter. Right? So look at the almutants, is what they said. Look at the almutants of these planets. And as a matter of fact, since we're here still, let's look at the almutant of, what was it, 24 Libra. Venus has 5 points. Saturn has four. It's nighttime. Mercury has two. 24. Venus has another 2 points. So Venus has 7 points and it's 20. Jupiter has one. Okay, so we know also, okay, so we're going to go back to the chart so that people who are like, what the fuck, will be totally with us. All right. So what do we say? 24th degree or 23rd degree of Libra was the part of kingdom, right? That's the part of kingdom. And we mentioned that what did he say? He said, look at the ruler of the ascendant, the Al-Mubtaz of the ascendant, which in this case is the Sun and Jupiter, right? They are tied. And look for the connections, the interminglings, right? Okay. So we've got the part of kingdom, Lord of the part of kingdom, applying to the ruler of the tenth. We've got the ruler of the tenth with a benefic. The benefic in this case also turns out to be the other almutant of the ascendant, because in this case, like I said, both Sun and Jupiter get 5 points. They are tied for almutant. And to be honest, Jupiter is stronger, even though he's in the sixth house by essential dignity. Jupiter is stronger than the sun. So he actually can push it out a little bit more, which means we've got quite a few of these. We've got not exactly the kind of indicators that we'd be looking for. Also note here that the moon has just left the trine to Jupiter and left the sign. Remember, didn't we just have the other thing where the sun had just left the trine or something? And I saw a lot of this, and I saw this in Andrew's chart too, where and we'll see it in a second. Okay, so look at how straightforward so much of that, not straightforward, but powerful. So much of this is the Venus pushing onto the Mars, the Mars already with the Jupiter. So the Mars is this Mars is really strongly kind of taken care of. And note also it's in the 11th house from the part of fortune, which is called the acquisition, which means that Jupiter is the ruler of the acquisition. So that means we've got the ruler of the 10th with the ruler of the acquisition together in the acquisition. That's a pretty cool thing. We've got the moon, like I said. Moon is very much in the 10th, and this is really the one of the few charts that's kind of unequivocally so. Okay, so that's what's going on with the commingling of the 10th and the blah 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 and all of that stuff. Okay, let's look at Donald Trump. So I wasn't completely convinced about these lights being in the angles, but what we can do now is find the ruler of the 10th, which is Venus, right? And we can find look at how the ruler of the 10th is once again with the part of fortune, with the ruler of the part of fortune. And let's find the part of kingdom. So kingdom is Saturn to Moon, no, Sun to Saturn. Oh, 30 plus 1. And we're at the very end. We're on Regulus. We're at the very end of the sign. So we're going to go to 30 degrees of Virgo plus 1. And it brings us into the first degree of Libra. So, what did we just say? So now we've got the thing where, but it's daytime. Now we've got the thing where Libra is the ruler of the kingdom. And Libra, what else? Venus is the ruler of the 10th, and she's the ruler of the kingdom. She's with the ruler of the part of fortune. Anything else going on with her and anybody else? Ruler of the ascendant is. So now, what was the other things we were looking for? We were looking for the mutant of the second of the 25 of the 10th rather. So 25 Taurus, Venus, Moon, daytime, Venus, 20 Saturn, Saturn. Okay, so absolutely Venus. But note, what was it? It was Venus, 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 Moon, Venus, Saturn, Saturn. So even the makeup of this degree had this involved in it, right? And remember once again that, and oh no, Jupiter is that puts this retrograde Jupiter on the kingdom, right? The part of kingdom is here. Puts this retrograde Jupiter on the kingdom. And here we have the Venus with the Saturn, once again, who is the ruler of the part of fortune. And Venus and Saturn make up this thing here. Okay, what would be the next thing? 10th house. Where is the ruler? Where is the Sun? Sun is a here. Oh, we saw how the sun is with that. Oh, is receiving, getting reception from that Mars. And there's that this is very powerful. This is what makes this person such an asshole. This very powerful sextile between, and especially running their mouth and and saying shitty things and the egotistical bragging and all of that stuff would come from this Sun Mars thing. But yes, so that's that's the only kind of main thing going on with it, right? The Sun just left the trine of the Jupiter where they both gave each other detriment and fall. And then the moon is applying, actually, the moon is the closest to the sun, right? So the moon's applying, the ruler of the 12th is applying to the ruler of the first. So we know that this person's just got, well, it's a really fucked up person. Anyway, right. So, anyway, yeah, so but, yeah, all right. So that's our mad dictator. Going on, okay, here's Prince Andrew. And if I'm not mistaken, his kingdom is at like 26 Gemini. Let's do it. So it's Saturn, it's Sun to Saturn. So Sun to Saturn, so it's 0 Pisces. So I'll go to 0 Cancer, Capricorn, excuse me. 0 Pisces to 0 Capricorn, go forward 14. Go back 60 to, you're right, to 12 Gemini, forward 14 to 26 Gemini. That's right. 26 Gemini is so this is one of the reasons I wanted to look at this is I wanted to see why Prince Andrew wasn't king and why Prince Charles was. Now, of course, the reason Prince Andrew isn't king is because he's 12 years younger. But could that be seen? I mean, could there have been something that had happened? For instance, if Prince Charles had died, Prince Andrew might have been the next for the throne. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's probably the case. But look here how the ruler of kingdom in this particular case is fallen. in the eighth house. It's not in any kind of good we didn't really have the moon or sun in very strongly angular, even though the moon's in at the very end and not in the same sign. That's still pretty close. We could kind of technically say the moon is angular. So we could technically say, but it's daytime, right? So we really want the sun to be the one that's angular. But we can technically say the moon is, right? So what? But we don't see anything with this Mercury. What's going on with the 10th? It's in the sixth. It's kind of like what was going on, what was the other one with the Mars and the Jupiter, but that one was a little bit different. Here, the Mars is exalted, right? And oh, wait, so it's 23 degrees of Aries. And it's sun, it's daytime. So who's the mutant? It should be the sun. Mars has five, sun has four, sun has three, Mars has two, and Venus has one. Wait, Mars is right. 23, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mars has two. That's hilarious. So Sun and Mars are tied. Sun and Mars are tied, and the Mars is stronger though, right? It's stronger by exaltation, and it's with its own ruler too, and it's with Venus. So the sun is really the stronger of them. But obviously, we would want if the sun were strong, that might have had more of an indication. Like if the sun were up here, right? That might have been more of an indication that there was going to be something like that going on. Note that he's also got the late degrees of Sagittarius that Prince Charles had, or that King Charles has, but nothing with it, nothing really helping it. The sun, that's where it was. It was Andrew's sun that just left the sextile of the Jupiter in Aquarius. Yeah, but nothing else that's really helpful to this, like it was with Prince Charles. Okay, here's the king, right? And he doesn't have any kingship. Right, so he didn't have kingship things. I guess the difference between real royalty is family, right? Is being born into it, and if we look back at Andrew and at Charles, we'll see kind of strong fourth house indicators probably too. Whereas here, let's see. So we don't have and what's going on with the oh, there's nothing going. That's right. It's nighttime, but there's this moon is unaspected. And I think its next thing is going to be what the sextile to the. Oh wait, no wait, isn't there? And wait, there's something else. There's some weird. No, no, it's a different chart. But yeah, the moon's unaspected, and then oh no no no, that's what it was. The moon and the part of fortune are very close to Anticia. Not quite close enough. They should be closer. The moon should be it should be 225. 2 minutes, two degrees and 25 minutes is what the moon should be in order for the Anticia to be perfect, but it's pretty close. And so, yeah, the moon and the part of fortune are Antician there. But aside from that, that's all that's going on with the moon. Oh no, her next aspect is the sextile to the sun, but it's still wide, 17, Jupiter at 18, so nothing really going on, right? With the sun applying to Jupiter, right? But applying from Jupiter's fall to Jupiter. So nothing really saying much about that. Let's see part of kingdom. It's nighttime, Saturn to Sun, so back 30, back 8, right? 25 Aquarius to 17 Capricorn, right? So back 30, back 8. So doing that, back 30, back another 8 brings us to what? 13.5 brings us to 5 degrees of Scorpio. Back 30, back 8, 5 degrees of Scorpio. Note once again the Jupiter on the kingdom here. Jupiter is on the kingdom. And and note here, we've got the ruler of the kingdom in the midheaven, in the 10th house, right? It's definitely not within 5 degrees of the 11th. It's very much there. So now what's going on with that? Next to nothing, right? Look, it's up there. Maybe it's the Saturn. The sun is in its sign. The sun is in its the sun is in its exaltation. But it's separating, right? There is no applying aspect. There's another separating aspect with the Mercury wave. Matter of fact, the Mercury is really the separating from the Jupiter. So no, last thing that happened with the Mars is the sun separated from it. What do we know about sun? The sun is also fame and knowledge, fame and all of that. That also the sun would be giving exaltation to Mars. Sun is recognition. Let's see, the Jupiter is the ruler of the ascendant here. Jupiter's, and now it looks like he's in the 12th here, but he's not. I mean, 11th here. He's in the 12th. He's on the cusp of the 12th. So this Jupiter's in the 12th, right? So it's interesting. Like this chart doesn't come off so much for me like this way. That's why I kind of put it up there was because I was like, okay, this is the king of rock and roll. He was called the king. So why is it that this chart isn't more royal, or is it? There's some other stuff with this Saturn. This Saturn has, see, when we do some of my other technique, this Saturn ends up coming out and showing itself, and that's an interesting thing. But we do have the ruler of the kingdom in the midheaven. What's going on with the 10th house? That's Mercury. So 10th house Mercury, the ruler Jupiter. So once again, we did just say that Jupiter and Mercury were just leaving each other. We're just, Mercury was just separating, right? So there's that sextile there between the two. But look, it's Capricorn is once still still the fall of Jupiter. So maybe some of those things do matter. Some of those things don't matter as much. Jupiter's applying to the square of Saturn. It's a little bit wide, but it is happening. The sun is applying to the sextile of Jupiter. Right? And so that does illuminate the Jupiter a little bit more. Who are the important ones? Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter are the main ones that we'd be looking at, right? Yep. Okay. So continuing on, next to the next person. We're just going to do those two for now. There's another classification qualification, but maybe we'll do this as a part two, and with other people. I'm wondering if he goes all the way down and says, okay, when this is going on, that person's a fucking pauper, and he even is kind of saying that at the end of, well, I think the next section, or even of this section, where he says, well, but if those things aren't happening, the person's a pauper. All right, this is Walt Disney, another a king of industry, one of the most important figures of the 20th century. And so I thought I had just watched a little bit of a documentary about him, and so I thought it'd be interesting to see if there are kingly indicators in the chart at all. So we did see that the moon is in an angle, and that she just left the square of the Mars. Which and with from her detriment, which doesn't necessarily make that a great. That's not. I mean, Mars is very strong, but that doesn't make that a good, a really great square. But she is about to try sextile the sun, which isn't a bad thing. But he's the ruler of the 12th. um, and then obviously the Jupiter and the Saturn. So where's the part of kingdom? Mercury is the ruler of the 10th. And look at how the ruler of the 10th is on exactly on the part of fortune. Okay, and then let's see. So it's nighttime. Saturn to Sun. So back 30, back 2. Back 30, back 2. So now that makes things a little bit different, don't it? Because that means that 24 degrees, 22 degrees of Leo is the kingdom, the part of kingdom, which means that the moon, the angular moon, is applying to the part of kingdom. Mercury is the ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the 10th, obviously in the chart. But that part of kingdom thing, moon and the part of kingdom, that's a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? That makes it. I mean, now I mean, can we really? Maybe we really need to. Maybe the part of kingdom is a really important, seemingly, part of the kingdom is a really important factor in seeing whether or not this is going to be an important thing. Um, there's also that square to Mars that just happened, and look at how that square to that Mars is angular. And the other things that she will square, the Saturn and the Jupiter, are also angular, whereas the Sun is approaching the angle, or the angle is leaving the Sun, really. But the Sun is within 10 degrees, so not close, well, not quite close enough. But I think even if I didn't know about this technique, I would maybe think, huh, well, definitely seeing the ruler of the tenth on the part of fortune would have said, this person is, and obviously Mars and Capricorn with the Saturn and everything, the deadly serious workaholic, and work is everything. Um, Ella. Okay, so this is our only female, but I like the chart so much, and I thought there were so many so many indicators that are, cool and interesting and unusual. And when we find and this has my indicators, my other techniques indicators all over it, but it also has, it's got the Casimir Venus, who's the ruler of the 10th. It's got the Jupiter in the 10th. All right, so it's got and then the Mercury, and Mercury is there. Jupiter, so the rule of the 10th and the 11th together in the 10th. And so let's see. Oh, of course, and the ruler of the 10th and the first are together. Remember, that was one of the things we were looking at already, was what's going on between the mutant of the first and mutant of the 10th. Now, if I'm not mistaken, at 12 Taurus, Venus, no, Venus has seven already. Yeah, ain't nobody taking over. Mercury has, okay, yeah, nobody's taking over. All right, so Venus has, very much has the midheaven, but who's got the kingdom? It's daytime. Sun to Saturn. And so I'm going to go 120 and go back 10. So, right, so forward 120 to 5 degrees Leo and go back 10 to 25 degrees of Cancer. So we'll do the same thing here. We go forward to 19 degrees of Sagittarius and go back 10 to 9 degrees of Sagittarius. The ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and he's up there in the midheaven. And is he aspecting anybody or doing whatever? Not really, but he's just kind of up there doing his thing. Note also that the Venus is the ruler of the part of fortune too, and she's that Casimir rule of the 10th, and she's the ruler of this Jupiter. So that's interesting. But he's up there in the 10th with her, up there in the 10th with this Mercury, who's the ruler of the 11th. So Jupiter becomes the ruler of the kingdom with the ruler of the 11th. So oh, I said ruler 10th and 11th were together. That was a mistake. Jupiter is with the ruler of the 11th. Ruler of the first is with the ruler of the 10th. All of these are in the sign of the 10th house, the sign that represents the 10th house. The other Venus sign is the part of fortune, is the part of fortune. So yeah, I think we can stop there. This would be obviously the secret ingredient is the part of kingdom and being able to see kind of what's going on with the part of kingdom. This has been really fascinating. I'm so glad that I did it.